I've been using the same method to capture onboard motorcycle audio for over 6 years now. And I think it might be time for a change. Now, when I say onboard motorcycle audio, I'm not talking about capturing the sound of my voice inside my helmet like you're hearing now. I'm talking about capturing the sounds of the motorcycle, the engine, the exhaust, from the rider's perspective, like this. In my motorcycle videos, I use a mix of both. Most of the time, you hear the microphone that's inside my helmet. But when I don't have anything to say, or when the riding gets a little more interesting, then I switch to my other microphone. To demonstrate why it's important to use dedicated microphones for these purposes, and not just the internal microphone on the GoPro, I will now unplug my helmet mic. My helmet mic setup deserves its own video, and if I ever make one, I'll link to it below. Today, we're just going to be talking about bike audio, which in my case is a microphone mounted to the rear fender. This is the Zoom H1 handy microphone. This is the original one, so it takes AA's and has a mini USB port. I have it mounted to a GoPro plate there on the rear fender, with just a little set of adapters. That's a 1/4-20 thread to a GoPro arm to a GoPro clip. There are two things that make onboard motorcycle audio sound good, and neither of them are a nice microphone, although that can certainly help. The first thing is to make sure there is nothing but air between your microphone and your motorcycle's exhaust tips. If the mic is fully contained by anything, whether that's your backpack, saddlebag, or pocket, your audio will not be as clear as it could be if it were exposed to open air. The second, even more important thing you must do to get good onboard audio is to protect your microphone from wind. Wind noise is the #1 audio killer when recording a motorcycle ride, or any other action sport for that matter. Whatever microphone you use should be positioned somewhere out of the flow of oncoming air without being fully encased. Mounted here, my H1 Zoom achieves both of those things. It has a direct line of sound from the microphone to the exhaust tip, and it's also blocked from the wind by my body and the motorcycle. This setup has yielded pretty decent audio quality, good enough for me anyway, and I've gotten by with it for, I want to say like 6 years, but lately I'm feeling motivated to improve my onboard riding audio. And today we're going to run a couple of experiments to see if I can find the new best setup for me. I do need to mention this mounting method is only possible for me because I have the first gen American spec speed twin with integrated tail lights, brake lights, and turn signals to either side of the fender. The later speed twins in America, 2021 Plus, and all speed twins in Europe have a central brake light, and these two outside lights are just turn signals and tail lights. What that means is that if you have a newer speed twin or a European speed twin and you mounted your microphone right here, you would be blocking view of your brake light, which is not legal and not safe. This isn't going to be a speed twin specific video. The concepts I'll be demonstrating could be applied to almost any motorcycle, but these are just the sorts of things you need to be aware of when choosing a placement for your microphone. The first change I'm going to make is trying out a new microphone, the latest Zoom H1 Essential. The audio quality of this latest H1 is not necessarily better than the one that's 2 generations old, but it does have several new features to improve the workflow, to make it easier for me to capture good audio. First of all, it now runs on AA's and has a USB Type-C port, thank goodness. But the biggest change is that it now features 32-bit float audio. 32-bit float is the buzzword in prosumer audio these days. I'm not enough of an audio geek to give a good explanation of it here, so I'll link to that in the description below. But what it does mean for the end user is that your microphone will be much better at avoiding clipping, which is when it tries to record something that's a little bit too loud for its sensitivity level. What's so bad about clipping, you ask? This is what clipping sounds like. The other nice thing about 32-bit float is that you don't have to manually set the sensitivity like you did on the prior 2 generations of Zoom H1. It's just always at the right sensitivity. The advantage of that will become apparent when we get into post-production. So our first test is going to be to mount the new Zoom H1 Essential, I'm leaving that in the same way that I had mounted the old one, and see if the device alone makes a difference. After that, we're going to test the new H1 Essential in several other recording positions. And just to keep it scientific, we're going to test all those positions at the same time. How is that possible, you ask? While I did only buy one new H1 Essential, one of my duties at my day job involves using handheld recorders like this one, and I managed to borrow a couple over the weekend. Yes, I will put them back. I have a total of 5 of these things. Test number... Ooh, I forgot to turn this guy on. Okay, everybody together. Big sync. Test number 1. So I'm actually going to run this experiment in 2 stages. The first stage will be sort of a control group, and I'm running a few methods that I'm not expecting to be all that good, but I'm going to use them to demonstrate the concepts I've been talking about. So I have my original H1, my normal setup is here. And then I have one of the new H1s set up right here. And this one will show you what happens when you have a microphone with a really good line of sight, so to speak, line of sound towards your exhaust, but is not protected from the wind. This is going to be taking a lot of wind. My leg might block a little bit of it, but this is a naked bike. It's still going to be pretty turbulent. I'm also running a recorder inside my backpack. I know that's a popular place for people to do it, as well as one inside my trunk. I figure I have the trunk, might as well use it. And those are going to demonstrate what happens when you have a recorder that is very well protected from the wind, but does not have a direct line to the exhaust or to the engine. There's a lot of material in between the recorder and the sound. And lastly, I'm also testing having a recorder in my jacket pocket. I know that's another popular method that a lot of people like to try. And that one I'm expecting to be the worst. It's going to be a little too insulated by my jacket, but also this is a mesh jacket, so it's still going to be taking a lot of wind. All of these microphones are wearing wind blockers, also known as a dead cat, which are a no-brainer accessory that should go on any microphone used outdoors. Oh, and just so we're covering all our bases with this first stage here, you will also get to hear the audio from inside my helmet, like you are now, as well as the GoPro's internal microphone audio. We'll take a look at the results of each individual microphone after we've run both test stages and stepped into the editing room. For now, check out this short test lap with the audio from my standard setup, the fender-mounted Zoom H1. Okay, everybody ready? Big sync time. Say cheese. Away we go to test number 2. This time around, we are running my original recording method, but with the H1 Essential instead of the first generation H1. We're also running additional H1 Essentials, one clipped to the outside of my backpack, one clipped to the pillion grab strap, and just for curiosity's sake, I threw my DJI wireless mics, one onto the pillion grab strap and one onto the bottom strap of my camera sling bag. I'm not expecting those to match or beat the H1 audio, but if they can get close, it might be worth it to have one less thing to carry around. Just for kicks, here's all 7 of those audio tracks played simultaneously. it's time to take a listen to each microphone setup we tested. We start by opening up our nonlinear editing software of choice. I use Premiere Pro because I'm a grown-up and a masochist. The first thing we'll need to do is sync all our audio recordings with our video recording. That's why you hear me clap at the beginning of the test.
Okay, everybody together. Big sync. Test number 1.
After locating the exact video frame of the clap, locate the same point in your audio file, set that as your in point, and insert it into a new audio track in your timeline. Rinse and repeat with all other audio tracks you need to sync. This isn't necessary for the GoPro's onboard mic or my helmet mic, because those record straight to the video file. It's also worth noting that later versions of the DJI mic can wirelessly record directly to certain DJI cameras. Something to keep in mind if convenience is your top priority. Alright, now that we're all synced up, we can start evaluating each of these recordings by isolating them one at a time. We'll start with the ones that I was not expecting to be winners. Right out of the gate, we can write off the GoPro's built-in mic, as well as the microphone in my helmet, which doesn't sound terrible, but just isn't for this. I will say though, on bikes with a lot of wind protection, the helmet mic does a much better job at cleanly capturing the sound of the motorcycle. Almost good enough to negate the need for a bike mic altogether. Next, let's take a listen to the recorders in my backpack and in my trunk. As expected, these don't really suffer from any wind noise below freeway speeds, but they do sound a bit muffled because they're fully contained, with no clear line of sight to the bike's mufflers. The one in my trunk sounds much worse than the backpack, and it picks up some clicks and rattles because I use my trunk to keep things in. Next, it's the pocket mic. Here we have the worst of both worlds. A muffled sound due to how much matter is in between it and the exhaust, and a lot of wind noise due to the air hitting it through my mesh jacket. The microphone positioned directly above the muffler yielded some of the most interesting results of this entire test. As you can see, we could expect this one to have the clearest audio and the most wind noise. And indeed, it's possibly the best sounding setup I tested below about 15 miles an hour. After that, it is Wind City. Lots of clipping, even with the H1 Essentials 32-bit float. Lastly, there's my old recording setup, with the original H1 mounted to my rear fender where it has a pretty clear line to the mufflers and is pretty well protected from the wind. You already heard this one. This is also where I should take a moment to point out one of the workflow benefits of 32-bit float, which this old recorder doesn't have. You can see here that even with auto level turned on, the microphone can only adjust its input level as a reaction to clipping. So you end up with these spots in the recording where the bike starts to get loud and the audio track dips to compensate. This means I have to make a volume adjustment in post to make it level again. It can be very fiddly to make it sound clean. You'll notice that the files from the H1E recorders see no such volume adjustments, and that's thanks to the 32-bit float keeping the sensitivity adjusted in real time. Again, I'm not the right person to explain to you how or why that works, but I hope you can see what a big difference it makes in the editing process. Now we move on to the recordings from the second stage of this test. I'm hoping that one of these will become my go-to recording method from now on. Unlike in the previous test, all of these have some degree of wind protection and a relatively unobscured line of sound to the motorcycle's muffler. We'll start with the two H1 Essentials clipped to my pillion strap and my backpack. They both sound okay at first, but once we get up to speed, the one on my backpack suffers from way more wind noise than the one on the pillion strap. In my previous test, I found that even the recorder inside my backpack also picked up way more wind noise than expected. I think what's happening is the wind breaking over my shoulders and helmet is so loud that the backpack mics pick it up even though that wind isn't directly hitting the microphone. Just a fact of life for naked bikes, I'm afraid. I tested these same two placements with the DJI wireless mics. This is the original version. I found the results to be comparable to the H1Es in the same positions relative to each other, just with less sound quality across the board, and some clipping when we're really on the gas. Worth noting, the newer DJI wireless mics have 32-bit float, which would alleviate that clipping. Finally, we arrive at the last audio setup I tested, the Zoom H1 Essential mounted to my Speed Twin's rear fender. I confess, I went into this test expecting this setup to be the best, and maybe this is confirmation bias talking, but I believe that has proved to be true. We get the same balance of wind protection and unobstructed audio as my old setup, only now with the benefits of 32-bit float. I see no reason to use anything but this method for capturing onboard audio of my Speed Twin. You may notice that even this still picks up a whiff of wind noise here and there. Although it's not wind directly hitting the mic, you just can't eliminate the sounds of wind breaking on other nearby parts of the motorcycle. All things considered, I think this is as good as my setup is going to get with the level of effort and investment that I'm willing to put into it. I know I said that a nice microphone is not essential for capturing good motorcycle audio, but I do believe that 32-bit float is the single most helpful feature to look for if you're shopping for a mic for this purpose. I was also quite happy with the H1E clipped to my pillion strap, and I could see myself using that method on occasions or motorcycles where I don't have as convenient of a mounting location as I do on the Speed Twin. So now I want to hear from you. Which of these recording methods do you think sounded the best today? And if you record onboard audio on your motorcycle rides, tell me what your preferred setup is. Even better, if you have an example that you can link to, leave it in the comments below. I would love to check it out. That's all I've got for you today. Thanks for watching, ride safe, and I'll see you next time.